Okay, so it's 17, so we should start now. Hi everyone, I'm Roy. So thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to share my research on reviving the Hong Kong type, a 19th century Chinese type face using a rigorous evidence-based method. So I will walk through you the Hong Kong type history, so why is it important, and a 10-stage framework that I developed to bring the historical typeface back to life. So the official name is an analytical framework for the revival of physical source-based metotype application to the revival of the Hong Kong type. So what is Hong Kong type? So it is a traditional Chinese font from the 19th century created with the Western metotype technique. So it came to two sizes. One is 24 point and one is 13.5 point. Introduced roughly 4,017 characters at the beginning for each size. So lately, expand to 6,000 characters. So let's look at the Hong Kong type timeline for brief timeline. So the projects begin in 1832 under Samuel Dyer in Malacca, aiming to create a Chinese movable type. So after Dyer died in 1843, Alexander and John Smoyer continued the work in Hong Kong. So by 1849, Richard Cole has completed the fonts. So by the time they were casting metotype from finished matrices and even selling the fonts around the world. Then in 1863, William Gamble bought the Hong Kong type 1 piece per characters in Shanghai and electric cast the Hong Kong type matrices. So allow a new copy to be made. So after that, post 1863, the Hong Kong type project is essentially finished. So now, why is this significant? So firstly, Hong Kong type introduced a systematic approach to a character selection based on the frequency of use. So Samuel Dyer studied more than 10 Chinese classic books, counting each unique characters and how often it appears. He estimates that roughly 2,500 to 3,000 characters could cover most needs. So using this data, Hong Kong type focuses on 3,000 most used character first. Using this data, rather than attempting to create a single anomalous set. So it was a major innovation, one of the first evidence-based approach to design a Chinese characters typeface. So secondly, Hong Kong type was admired by its beauty. So 19th century printers and readers praised how it looked. So for example, an 1833 journal called The Chinese Tapestry described Hong Kong type as beautiful, saying it's compared well to the best Chinese woodblock printing of the time. That was a high praise, since the woodblock at that time was a gold standard. In 1863, a printer named James Summers in Oxford also prized the Hong Kong type proportion and elegance, noting only a few minor irregularities. So together, those accounts show the Hong Kong type design were widely admired for the characteristic and elegance. So proving that the metal type could meet the reader high expectation. So thirdly, Hong Kong type was significant for its technological and global impacts. So by the mid-19th century, it was one of the four found main Chinese type used by the missionary. So others were Berlin type and Paris type, and the two sides of Hong Kong type. So after 1849, its measures and cast was sold all over the world, recording how Hong Kong type fonts in use over 10 countries in 1896. So that global reach was extraordinary for the Hong Kong typeface for the era. So when William Gamble electronic cast the Hong Kong type in 1863, so it enabled many press to have their own copies of the fonts. So Hong Kong type also helped shift the East Asia from woodblock to metal type printing. So it showed that how metal type could be durable and consistent while still producing the high quality text reader accepted. In short, so Hong Kong type bridged the traditional elastic and the industrial technologies. So this is the advertisement of the William Gamble, the American Prudential Missionary Press in Shanghai. So this is 24-point Hong Kong type, and this is 13.5-point Hong Kong type. So the most interesting part of this research is we can reach the physical evidence. So to revive the historical typeface like Hong Kong type, we started with primary source, the original materials. So we have three crucial sources. Firstly, is the Hong Kong type matrices are preserved at the Oxford University Press Museum. So those are the metal molds used to cast the type that we call matrices. So at OUP, there are 10 drawers of 24-point matrices and 8 drawers of 13.5-point matrices. So each drawer holds hundreds of the matrices, roughly like 600 per drawer for 24-point and 800 per drawers for the 13.5-point. So they are even numbered by the characters. For example, lam on the left side is numbered as 81. So those numbers are believed as a sorting method of the Oxford printer who can't understand Chinese to pick them up and cast them. So those OUP matrices are the first generation source and the actual mold from the 1840s. So they gave us a direct access to the original letter form as cut by the founder, which is incredibly valuable. So secondly, we have actual cast metal type pieces from Hong Kong type at the University of Reading. In our typography department, we have 2 sets of 13.5-point Hong Kong type. So one is donated by the St. Bright Foundation, and other one is from Type Archive. The St. Bright Foundation one consists 24 tray of galley of the type. So galley 4 and 6 contain the most frequently characters, so about 144 characters each, with 15 to 13 pieces of each, so reflecting the commonly used. So the other galleys hold about like 250 characters each, and with up to like 7 pieces of each characters for less commonly used one. So this is galley 6. So you can see, starting from number 1 there, and counting all through here is 155th. So each characters, they are duplicated with like roughly calculate 15 pieces per row. So in 2 rows, there will be like 30 pieces per characters. So the second set is the wooden one, which is donated by the Type Archive in 24 wooden drawers. Again, with the frequency used characters in drawer 4 and 6, with roughly 30 to 15 pieces each. So each holding 20 to 40 pieces of each characters. So this is not the commonly used characters tray. So this is the normal one. So you can see in each characters, they have around 20 to 40 pieces per character. So this is the specimen that we found of the wooden tray. That is exactly the same as the layout of the wooden tray printing. And they numbered each characters as well. But these wooden drawers wasn't numbered. But these specimen was numbered. We still figuring out how. So the most important step was confirming the reading types are really come from the OUP matrices, and they're not from some later copies. So we did it by direct comparison. We measured the sample from a dozen characters, including Wing Dong Guok and others. So on the other matrices and metal types, the result matched perfectly. All sampled characters line up exactly. Statistically, such a perfect match, putting a type into a matrix. I really get that I can borrow the type out of Reading, and I can do such comparison with a good relationship with the OUP museum that really valuable to do the direct matching. So we can tell the Reading types was casted from the OUP matrices. So they gave us the confidence that the physical source are authentic and directly connected to the original Hong Kong type design. So reviving a historical typeface isn't just scanning the letters. It requires meeting several key conditions from prior research and our experience. So we identify the 4 requirements. So firstly, the evidential rigors. So we must gather and use the all available evidence for the original design. That means examining every surviving artifact, punches, matrices, and type and prints. We couldn't find any punches right now, unfortunately, but hopefully we can do it, to ground our revival in facts. So secondly, reliable measurement. Our measurement must be trustworthy. To achieve this, we compare multiple sources, making our own controlled print and examine historical print to account for ink spreads and wear. So thirdly, analysis, extracting the design parameters and the measurement from the evidence. So thirdly, the reproductivities. So the process should be systematic and repeatable. So we use the digital workflow, automatic tracing, birth secret refinement, shook standardization, so others can follow the method. So finally, modernization. After the revival of the design, so we adopt the typeface for today, and it might be include adding characters for the modern usage for optimizing the design for digital display. So in short, our revival must be historical faithful, precise, systematic, and forward-looking. So to put those principles into action, we use 10-stage framework for reviving physical source-based metal type fonts like Hong Kong type. So you can think as this flow. Examine the physical objects, compare print, analyze data, rebuild digitally, and produce a modern fonts. So each day build on the previous, so we don't lose any part of the original design. So now I'll go through every phase in the details. So we have example of how we apply to the Hong Kong type. So firstly, capturing the physical source. So this gave us a evidence foundation. So we start with examining the original matrices and metal type of Hong Kong type. So capturing those physical source gave us the close look of the typeface original design intents. So before any distortion from ink and paper. So capturing the fine details was like tiny metal type was challenging. So for the Hong Kong type 13.5 point in Reading, we built a compact micro photographer setup at Reading. So here is the result. So this gave us a high-resolution photo of each letters, essentially digitalizing the craftsmanship and creating a micro studio to peer the 19th century workmanship. So those images fulfill our evidential rigorous requirement by reserving the original design into digital form. I will show some more pictures later in the analysis part, so right now I'm just skipping it. So phase 2, examine the print. So after the physical objects, we look at the letters, because prints will show how the typeface actually appear on paper. So historical prints are the closer records of the type in use. So they show the letters as readers saw it, with ink, impression, paper texture, etc. So by studying the print, we can learn things like soak spread or fill with ink, how surface settle with the paper, or even how rare the type was. So however, for the Hong Kong type, proved the difficulties into three main reasons. So first of all, they were few high-quality prints. So for the font we used that in this research, we call it the Oxford version. So this version of the Hong Kong type were used only in the part of some 19th century books in the UK. So for example, headings or short passage. So not in the full text Chinese. So it was hard to find a multiple clear impression of each characters. As you can see in this book, it's a bilingual setting. So this few Chinese characters we used in the book. So in one of the edition, we couldn't find multiple copies of each characters. Secondly, what about we look at prints from other versions, like Missionary Press Abroad for the Hong Kong Yinghua College. They sold all over the world with modification or wear. So we can see the Hong Kong type starting from here in Singapore, and then lately we find in Hong Kong, and then they sold the Hong Kong type all over the world, including UK, Netherlands, Russia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, and here, Australia, and one sold to America. So different sort of the Hong Kong type font have a different modification and different version. So if we're studying the other prints, they are not exactly the print that I am studying right now. So thirdly, the only comprehensive Hong Kong type specimen that we had is printed in 1964, which is 100 years later after they acquire the matrices. So we will print later and it's quite buried. So in short, that we still haven't found a hard copy in OUP. It's only the scanned copy sent from them to us. So this research become really difficult, relied on the historical print, so it wasn't enough for the complete pictures. So we need a clear printed example under the controlled condition. That's why stage 4 came in. So stage 4, creating a contemporary print. So to overcome the scalities of the reliable print, so we print the Hong Kong type anew under controlled condition. So at Reading, we are about 6,000 pieces of the Hong Kong type with the duplicate, so enough to hand set the text. So since we confirmed that those sources mastered the original matrices, printing them should be faithfully reproduce the intended design. So I composed them and printed the new proof of the Hong Kong type. So we select the text and the characters to cover a broad sample of the fonts. So the result became high resolution letterpress impression on quality paper. So we relied mainly on those new proof when analyzed the Hong Kong type design. So because each letter appeared in minimal noise and rare, historical print serves as a reference to check the authorities. So sometimes it's the best way to study the historical fonts to print it yourself when you have the type. So it avoids fragile bulks and let you control the condition. So those new proof gave us the reproducible, so clear data for analysis. So let's briefly describe how we did it for printing to ensure the consistency. So we used the hand operation cylinder proofing press, locked the type into fixed it with the standard spacing. We aim for the light impression enough to pressure to transfer the ink without squeezing it, minimize the ink spread. Print the 10 copies for each pages, then choose the sharpest impression for analysis. Those selected prints were scanned into high resolution 3000 dpi for measurement. So in effect, we create a small 19th century press under a run of a microscope yielding data of the Hong Kong type design. That's a complete stage 4. But it's worth noting that in our new proof may be excellent for this research, but aren't identical to the 19th century print. On your right, in the 1833 printing from Oxford. 1883. So the page is slightly finer stroke details and different texture. Perhaps the original press have heavier pressure or different inks. So we keep that in mind during the analysis. So in practice, our new print served as a controlled baseline, and the historical print served as an authority check. So if something that in the new proof looks too heavy or too light to compare to the original, that flagged our issues. So this dual approach strengthened our analysis by grounding it into both fresh data and historical context. On the left is our print. On the right is a historical print at 1883, more than 150 years ago. And they did better than us. So phase 3, analysis. With all the images and the scan already, so we now analyze the evidence. So analysis is the heart of revival. It turns the raw source into design knowledge. Rather at eyeballing, we took a rigorous data-driven approach. So we follow 2 principles, methodology updates and the high magnification. So we place the old naked eye inspection with a digital analysis, measure with high resolution photos and scan under the software. So we could see the tiny details that meet somewhere else. So using this method, we developed a replicational process for analyzed Chinese type form. From this analysis, we extract a set of design parameters and metrics describing the Hong Kong type style. This quantitative approach means another researcher can follow the step that could get a similar result, which is important for the reproductivities. So let's look at some of the specific features that we measured in stage 6. So in our analysis, we measure about a broad range of the design parameters. For example, we look at the text face ratio. How could a M square for the character feel? So for Hong Kong type, most characters occupy 91 to 93 of their body. So very complex one, which the 1971 one, which is here. So it's really crucial that we side by side comparing with the metal type, because we can ensure the body frame and the text frame where is it. Because sometimes when you print it on the paper, you don't know where the square fit in. So the suggested designer scale, the complex characters slightly larger to fit all stroke legibly. So we also measure the stroke thickness by comparing the simple versus the complex characters. How to define simple is like less stroke. How to define complex is with more stroke, more than 20 strokes. So for instance, we use dog, a as a reference, 點. So in a relatively simple characters like some in here for reference. So you can see we measure the thinness stroke and the thickness stroke compared to here. So the thinnest one is 24 and the thickest one is 19.8. So in here, the more compact stroke is like 38 thickness to 84 for the thickness one. So what's that mean? When we're doing a revival, we're using this analysis to do the digitalize. The dot stroke, the thinnest point, should be within the range in 24 to 38. And the thickness one should be within the range in 84 to 89. So these is just a methodology of how to do the analysis, but mostly we should expand the analysis part to more than 10 characters for each category. So you can see dots is here, horizontal stroke here from the starting one to the middle one, because this middle one should be the thinnest one, and the starting one with some surface details. So we analyze dot, horizontal stroke, vertical stroke, fold stroke, press stroke, hook, and curve stroke. Curve stroke is here. So we also examine the overshoot. Some stroke like circle and triangle extend slightly past the normal boundary to look balanced. So we calculate the overshoots by comparing the stroke shape to reference the square. So found that Hong Kong type was systematically used as the overshoot to so the all elements align visually. So this means, for example, curved characters doesn't look too small next to the straight edge one. So we catalog the fundamental stroke shape too. For example, extracting the horizontal stroke from the letter lam. This is the dot stroke from lam, and this is the horizontal stroke from lam. Also the vertical and horizontal one from there. This shows us the extracted stroke from there with the high magnification and verify them against the photo of metal type. It's really important that I doing the analysis side by side with the metal type and the proof to gather the more exact value and results. So the stroke dictionary revive the Hong Kong type consistent stroke style, which we know that we would have to preserve in the revival. So continue the analysis. We also check that each character balance. So we measure the vertical center of the gravity of the stroke. So Hong Kong type keeps its center near the middle of the character frame, avoiding the uneven text color. So if some character were top heavy and other was bottom heavy, lines should be not look bumpy. So that's not the case here. So on the bottom is a reference of not too serif. So that's a print. So how can we measure that the middle of the gravity is like every outer stroke of the characters. So we put a 9 on it, and then each dot generate to the middle of the side. And then when this 3 line join, so this is the middle. So the blue line is a mathematical center. So you can see for this circle characters and the square characters is exactly in the middle, slightly. So, but you can reference to the not too serif that should not be looking too bumpy. For example, if the character sung, if looking bumpy, it should be the base. It should be the bottom horizontal line to sit over the baseline, so it will down to here, so it will look bumpy. But that's not the case in Hong Kong type. So that's how we do the analysis to make sure that it's fit the standards, and we should use it for the revival. So we found the designer would often adjust the form from the visual weights is centered. So we also check the optical center horizontal balance by looking at the distribution of the counters, so the white space. So for example, if one side of the characters have the biggest open area, so the designer should shift the elements so the whole characters still look balanced. The measure of the center is exactly the same as the center of gravity. The blue line is the mathematical center, and how they shift the mathematical center to the optical center by measuring the closer counter. How the measuring the center of it is exactly the same as I mentioned before. In terms of the optical center, we also analyze the open and closed counter measurement. So the systematical characters often have a exactly equal open space on both sides, which really surprised me before I do the analyze that, oh, it looks really good for a Chinese reader. But after the mathematical analysis, we can see that the open counter in here, it's too far. The red line in here, this one and this one is exactly the same unit in here and on the top of the circle. So by measuring it, we can see that how the aesthetic come from. No worries, this is the last of the analysis that I'm showing today, because there's much of it. And I know you guys not familiar with Chinese, so I won't go deeper. The placement of the fold and press stroke. So this item refers to how major diagonal stroke are positioned in the relationship to the rest. So we examine the Hong Kong type has the special treatment, but this overlap with the above principle. So normally, the press stroke should be slightly higher than the fold stroke. Oh, where's this? This one is the fold stroke and this one is the press stroke. So it should be slightly higher. By measuring the difference, it should slightly higher than it. So all those measurements, I think I only mentioned 6 to 7 of it, but not all of it. But all those measurements and observations from the stage 6 gave us the detailed profile of the Hong Kong type design. So we have numbers and visual documentation for everything from overall proportion down to stroke endings. So the next step was use the analytical knowledge to actually reconstruct the typeface digitally. Phase 4 is digitalizing the source. So now we turn the evidence and the measurement into digital drawings. So we know that the letters should look like, but right now it's time to draw them in the font editor. So stage 8 was the manually brushed tracing. So we then checked our outline against the photographer to the metal type and the images of the characters. So this is crucial. Even our clean proof could have tiny gaps, whereas the ink missed it, and the bob, whereas the ink blend. So by referencing the metal, we are avoiding tracing any ink artifact. So we make only the minimal correction. For example, the stroke clearly should join that but appear broken in the print, so we correct it. So if it's a serif curve that cut off, we complete it. The result in stage 8 is a set of digital outline that we close to possible to the historical letters, but it's not polished font yet, but the digitalization of the metal type. Stage 9 was the stroke standardization. After tracing, our outline were accurate, but still a tiny inconsistent because even punches and cards have minute variation. So in stage 9, we brought the consistency and harmonize to the design that we're using our analyzed data. So for example, the horizontal stroke refinement. If we look at the entire stroke and thicknesses, which is number 1 on the left, it according the character wing have a flatter wing is on the left. Characters have a flatter horizontal stroke start, while the dong on the right have a more rounded one. So scanning across many characters, so the flattened style was more common. So in the stage 9, we choose to as a base model that adjusts to other to match. And the second one was the thicknesses. The analysis told us to know complexity characters should have a horizontal stroke around, let's say 33 to 64 units. So Wing and Dong are similar enough. So we picked the normal thicknesses about 40 pixels. Example 2 was the press and fold stroke, how to refine the diagonal stroke with a bursary curve, with some endings. Yeah, I think I need to speed up. And lastly, it was we using the component, using the Jinlin method, the Chinese characters that commonly share the common component. To wrap up, I want to reflect on how what is this revival journey means. So it started with a few dusty pieces of metal and incomplete records. So over the many months of research, printing, measuring, and design, so it became something that we could understand, reinterpret, and bring forward. So you've now seen the full journey from the original matrices to typepieces, to the print that we made, to the analysis by step-by-step reconstruction of the typefaces. Revivaling the Hong Kong type was just not the technical exercise. It's also about the personal mission to reconnect the forgotten chapters of the Chinese printing history. Hong Kong type was a remarkable accomplishment of the time that nearly faded away. So by bringing it back, I am helping to become a piece of history and showing that even something sitting in the soul for 200 years will still speak to us today. So we only can listen and look closely to his story. So it's about reflecting the past while designing for future, ensuring the legacy of Hong Kong type live in our form of new generation can appreciate and listen. Thank you so much for listening.